He tells me that as I get older, the wheel will move faster. Time will accelerate. Years will squish together. Each birthday will arrive a little sooner than the one before. And as the wheel turns faster and faster, life will pull me to the outside, away from who I really am at my core, away from my Dharma. That's when Baoji takes a deep breath and begins the journey that you and I are about to take together. Beta, he says for the final time, you must find your way back to the center. When I was in 7th grade, I believed my Dharma was to be a speechwriter. I wrote speeches for friends, family members, and classmates. If you needed a speech for a birthday, wedding, or bar mitzvah, I was your guy. I didn't get paid for any of this, but I loved every minute. As I got older, I took on part-time jobs and internships writing for local leaders. I moved to Washington, D.C., and wrote for congressmen and even presidential candidates. Writing speeches tapped into something deep inside of me. When I woke up in the morning, I felt energized and ready to tackle the day. It was a feeling I wanted to hold on to, the kind of work I wanted to devote the rest of my life to. A few years later, though, I found myself being lured in a different direction. The iPhone had just launched, social media companies were taking off, and tech entrepreneurs were becoming billionaires overnight. Suddenly, it seemed like all my friends were moving to Silicon Valley to be a part of the action. I felt torn between two worlds. One I knew I loved, and another I was afraid to miss. Ultimately, the financial allure of Silicon Valley was just too much for me to pass up. I moved out there with the dream of becoming a successful entrepreneur. And after a few years of working for other tech companies, I decided it was time to start my own. My first startup failed, and so did my second. When I decided to give it one more try, I felt that everything was on the line: my pride, my dignity, and my dwindling bank account. For the next several years, I bootstrapped my life, took a $0 salary, and worked harder than I ever had before. It was a high-stress existence, and the pressure took a toll. I was constantly sick, stressed out, and sleep-deprived. It became more and more difficult to get out of bed in the morning. I told myself it didn't matter because once I'd made my dream a reality, once I finally had the success, status, and wealth I was after, the joy would return and the emptiness I was feeling would fade away. And then it happened. My startup, Rise, was acquired by a large healthcare company. Suddenly, I had money in the bank. I was being profiled by CNBC and the Wall Street Journal. I was asked to speak about Rise's success at conferences. It all felt euphoric. But a couple of weeks after the sale, I woke up to a sinking realization. Those good feelings had disappeared. In fact, I didn't feel any happier than I had before. I was having trouble making sense of it. This was supposed to be my moment, the one that made all the years of hard work and sacrifice feel worthwhile, the moment when everything would finally be okay. Instead, I felt emptier than ever before. I genuinely believed that something was broken inside of me. That's when I began to remember the lessons Baoji taught me so many years before. I found myself transported back to his porch in New Delhi, staring at the Indian flag and the wheel of Dharma. I realized then that I had drifted to the outside of the wheel. My grandfather's voice became clear. You must find your way back to the center. We've been conditioned from an early age to believe that one day we'll reach a moment of arrival. Get good grades, go to a good school, get a good job, make good money, and we'll be fulfilled. Even as we get older and realize that life isn't quite so simple, we still manage to convince ourselves that if we can just get that next sale, next job, next promotion, then we'll finally be happy. Dr. Tal Ben-Shahar at Harvard University calls this the arrival fallacy. Every time you hit a target that's supposed to bring you lasting joy,